Chào mừng tất cả quý anh chị nhà đầu tư đã đến với một video chia sẻ của đội ngũ chuyên viên tư vấn Untitled Chapter cùng với ngài Khai Boy là phó chủ tịch của trung tâm vùng CMB. Good afternoon, Mr. Khai. Thank you for your turning today. So we will have a discussion with the sales team about EB5 program as well.
Hello, Mr. Khai. It's our honor to have you to join the opening sharing discussion with my clients. So one of my clients is really concerned about what is the advantage of the EB5 when we have released the new policy right now. Can you share something?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question, and I'm glad they're asking it because there are a lot of things that are new in the EB5 space, especially since the new legislation. Importantly, and I think probably the most important thing in the entire legislative outcome is protections for the EB5 investor. And those protections for the EB5 investor is the integrity measures that were part of the EB5 bill. Those integrity measures include the management of the funds. The funds need to go into a management control entity, a funds manager, or the projects and regional center projects need to have an annual audit. Now CMB, we've been doing annual audits dating back to 2014, so we knew that it was important. Now Congress has said it's important to the program. So that is one of the key components in understanding where the EB5 funds are and how they're being used and how they're being managed. Secondarily, another question and one of the benefits is transparency. Now the disclosures, there will be disclosures for every EB5 participant that will state exactly how much the investment was, what the fees were charged, all the disclosures on the matter of how those fees are distributed to the individual entities. All of that will need to be signed by the investor, so they will go in knowing exactly where those funds are being utilized and how they're being distributed by the participants in the program. Next thing is there's some longevity in EB5. Previously to the new legislation, the renewals were maybe 6 months or a year at a time. Now there's 5 years renewal. The EB5 program now has a good foundation for the next 5 years. And it looks as though the investors, as part of the legislation now, when they file their I-526, their initial qualifying petitions, that those investors will be grandfathered, they're protected. In the case of a lapse in the future, unlike what occurred in 2021 and part of 2022, where the USCIS actually stopped processing I-526 petitions, now they have the authority and the responsibility to maintain processing of the I-526 petitions that are already on file. So those are some key points, and it protects the investors and provides transparency to the new EB5 program. Another thing that I'll share with you is part of that transparency process. EB5 regional centers and principals like CMB's executive staff and ownership will have to undergo background checks. We'll need to do, I'm guessing we'll need to do fingerprinting and have a background check to make sure that we have a good background and we're not lawbreakers or we haven't broken the law in the past. So now the investors will be investing with various regional centers who will know those principles. The people who are leading that regional center have undergone a background check by the police of the United States or some authority in the United States, and they're not bad actors.
Thank you, Mr. Khai. Mr. Hung, you have a question to discuss with Mr. Khai?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Khai. So I'm happy to having a conversation with you today and to be on behalf of my client. My client has the most concern about for their investment. So with the CMB Regional Center, so how long will the investor will get their money back if they invest into the CMB project? And is there any secure for their investments? Can you share your opinion?
It's another outstanding question. It's an observational question by the investor that needs to take a look. Okay, if I invest, then what are my expectations of this investment? It's important to note that the investors, and I think you've learned this anytime that you deal with investors from the EB5 perspective, there are two primary goals. And the primary goal, number one, for the EB5 investors is to get permanent green card for themselves and their family. The second goal is to preserve and to protect that investment so that at some point in the future they can expect or they anticipate to have a return of that investment amount. Now those are the two critical goals. So the questions that your client has asked lead to that second part of things. What happened? How long should I expect before my money can come back? And geez, how are you going to protect my money? Are there any protections for that? Well, the answer to that question is in the CMB projects, our investors know when they go into our investments, they should anticipate being in an EB5 investment with CMB for at least 6 years. The long-term debt of our partnerships to the borrowers who utilize those EB5 funds, that is a 6-year term. It's a 6-year note that the borrower signed with. So the minimum they should anticipate is 6 years. However, the convolution or the combination of immigration and investment and business all come together at precisely this point. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the USCIS, has now put forth that the investor must conclude their 2 years of conditional residency before they qualify for the return of capital, meaning that their money must remain in the investment or must remain at risk before they can have the money returned to them until they conclude their 2 years of conditional residency. So what does that mean? That means that the investor has to file their I-526, their initial qualifying I-526 petition. That petition has to be processed and approved. Once it's processed and approved, then they stand in queue for a visa until that visa is allowed or a change of status in the United States. That begins to enter the United States or have a change of status that allows them to begin their conditional residency period, and then it's 2 years. So based on that particular example, if everything were to go swiftly and the investor's I-526 petition was processed in a couple of years and then they entered the United States after a short delay with the consulate, we're looking at 5.5 to 6 years before the money could be returned to them. Now, that aligns pretty closely with CMB's EB5 loans. It's right at that 6-year period. But however, the policy of the USCIS requires that the investor complete their 2 years of conditional residency before the money can be returned to them. And that's critical. Even though the 6 years may have elapsed and the borrower has repaid the partnership or repaid the loan, if the investor has not reached that point of conclusion of their 2 years of conditional residency, then they do not qualify for a return of capital and the money has to be redeployed and maintained at risk. So now that's a long answer to what is a simple question, but as I told you, it's that combination where business and immigration come together in the EB5 program.
Thank you very much for your useful information. How about Ms. Tracy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kai. And when I talk to my clients about EB5 program, and I also tell them about their company, they ask me like, among many companies, why should I choose like CMB regional centers to apply for my to take care of my EB5 application?
That particular client that you have is a very smart client. They're very insightful. So you're dealing with some very intelligent and some very thoughtful clients, all of you. You have some very, very good clients. And the reason that I say that is that yes, a regional center, CMB has the name regional center. There are also other companies out there that have the name regional center. But as your client is aware, not all regional centers are alike. They're not cut from the same fabric. They don't operate their businesses the same way. They don't function in the same manner. Although they're involved in the EB5 community or in the EB5 space, they're not cut from the same fabric. Importantly, CMB, again, we've been around for 25 years. We've had more than 80 projects come to the marketplace. We've had some of those, many of those projects have already seen I-526 petitions, that's the initial qualifying petition approval. We've seen return of capital. We've seen investors who have gotten their permanent green card. Project after project, time after time, CMB projects have delivered. All of our projects that have been adjudicated and evaluated by the USCIS have been approved 100% of the time without fail. Every investor that has filed for their I-829, their permanent green card application, they file knowing that they qualify for the approval of that petition based upon the required job creation. So again, CMB is an organization that is very, very conservative. The way that we do business and who we do business with, not only this group and your clients, but who we do business with in the United States who use those EB5 funds are some of the highest quality, highest caliber borrowers in the EB5 space. In fact, one of our developers, we've done 33 different projects with this developer. And the important reason that I bring that up is there's no developer and EB5 Regional Center relationship that has the quality, has used EB5 funds more frequently or more successfully than that developer of Hillwood Development Company and that relationship with CMB. It just doesn't exist.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Rất là cảm ơn đội ngũ chuyên viên tư vấn của Portugal Bridge cũng như ngày 2 đã có những cái chia sẻ rất là thú vị về chương trình EB5. Và nếu như anh chị mình đang quan tâm đến các chương trình định cư Mỹ cũng như EB5 thì đừng ngần ngại liên hệ ngay với các đội ngũ chuyên viên tư vấn của chúng tôi để được tư vấn thông tin mới nhất nhé. Tại Portugal Bridge,
Your children we care.